Are you tired of playing small and ready to step confidently into your greatness and share your unique brilliance with the world? Well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to empowering individuals and leaders as they confidently navigate the twists and turns of life and career transitions. If you're seeking direction, connection, or just a little push to play bigger, consider this podcast your VIP pass to a community that genuinely understands your journey. Join me every week for candid conversations and practical guidance designed to help you navigate the challenges of life and business, foster a growth mindset, and cultivate meaningful connections. It's time to embrace your inherent power, define your unique purpose, and prosper in every aspect of your life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am excited to be bringing you another installment of the Women in Power series. And today I have another fabulous female powerhouse where we're going to be discussing all things power, women, dynamics, all of the things. With that, I love to introduce you to Limor Bergman-Gross. Limor is a former director of engineering at DigitalOcean with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry as an engineering leader. She is now an executive coach for women in tech leadership who want to achieve more through a result-oriented coaching process. She is also the host of From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicating to discussing women's unique challenges in tech leadership and providing actionable tips to help overcome those challenges and grow their career within the tech industry. So with that, welcome to the show, Limor. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Sabine. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to be here today.
Yes. So you have done a lot. We've spoken. I've been watching you or paying attention and following you on LinkedIn and the work that you do. And so we're in similar spaces. However, your sweet spot is women in technology, given that has been your background. And so tell us, what were some of the career catalysts for you or some of the changes that you made during the course of your career that led you to step out and start your own business as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the major changes that I've done, there's several of them. One major change I've done is becoming a manager, an engineering manager for the first time. It was actually, I applied for that position when I was 8 months pregnant with my second child. I have 4 children. So when I was pregnant with the second, so that was one major change that I've done. Just before maternity leave, I interviewed. It was an internal move, but it was a big jump for me. The second big change I've done was moving to the US. So I now live in Israel, but I used to live in the US. And we moved from my husband employer, and I had back then, we had 4 very young children. The young ones were babies, and we moved to the US. I didn't know anyone there, and I had to start, my career there, continue, but kind of start over in a country that I don't have any connections there. That was the second major change. And I would say something in the middle was when I started working fully remote. And then the last major change I've done was moving back to Israel and basically deciding to change completely my career and leave the corporate world and start my business as an executive coach.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of major transitions and multiple transitions in one. So if we just think back to, especially that transition from moving into a leadership role, I share all the time that it's not just about the title change. It's not just about the pay bump. It's really an identity shift that you experience when you do that. And obviously you've done that multiple times to get to a senior level role. So what were some of the, I guess, initial challenges that you had, or maybe not the challenges, but lessons learned during that process of moving from individual contributor to a leadership position?
Yeah, so it was very, very big change for me. And I was very afraid of that change. I knew I wanted it, but I was scared. And I think the major lesson I learned, get a mentor or a coach right away. I actually asked for help from my manager back then. I knew that the manager that I had wasn't able to give me the kind of support I needed because he was very, very busy and was traveling a lot. So I asked him straight up, I need help. He got me a coach, but actually that coach was not the right fit for me because her approach was very pure coaching, kind of, you have all the answers within you and I'm going to help you find those answers. Well, I didn't have any answer. I had no clue what I was doing, literally no clue. So when you feel like you don't know what you're doing, I got a big team. I, I wanted a smaller one, but I got like 25 people. That was a
Oh,
huge
wow.
jump for me. I needed someone to help me figure things out and guide me. So I needed a mentor. I found it later on within the company. So get help. Don't do it all alone. And the help is not just someone who can give you advice, but also a place you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Share your fears, share what I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, you need a space to be able to say that. And sometimes you don't feel comfortable sharing that with your manager because, well, you want them to feel like they can trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much you can share with them, and you need that space.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the other question, especially along those lines, is, there are there are things that we see all the time, and we as women generalizing here. And there's the statistics around, like, if a woman reads a job description and she doesn't have 100%, right? Like 60% of the time, she's not going to apply for the role. Like, or it has to be like some high number. But I would imagine that for someone who is like months away from maternity leave, like that would be something that you could easily have talked yourself out of and saying, you know what, I don't want to start the job and then have to leave on maternity leave and then have to come back and all that other stuff. So how did you build that confidence and that strength and that courage to say, I'm going to go after this role, even with regards to where I am today, and not let my situation talk me out of going for it?
Great question. Full transparency. I, I didn't think I had a chance. And I really doubted myself. I said, like, I'm pregnant, like with a full belly. Like, what the hell am I doing? My husband was the one that pushed me. But the thing is, I had a very strong why.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to be a manager. And I felt like that was a great opportunity because it's much easier to shift to a management position from within the company. I felt like that's a great opportunity I don't want to miss. That was a big, very, very big why for me. It was a big motivation. And I had support. My husband really pushed me and gave me a lot of courage and a lot of confidence. He said, what's the worst you can do? I mean, give it a shot, try it out.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, I had a sponsor. So I didn't know to call them a sponsor back then, but it was like a former manager that really knew me very well and appreciated me. And he advocated for me. He helped me. So I guess those were the three things that helped me: sponsorship, the support system, and the strong why.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very succinct. And we're gonna go back into highlighting the sponsorship aspect, and also the support piece as well. But going into this topic of women, are the dynamics with power, our relationship with power. I've been asking guests who have been part of the series, one specific question with like multiple layers. So I have to ask you as well. So, as you think of the words power, authority, and influence, how do you define those three? And then what are your experiences with them?
Yeah. So power is having an ability to make great impact and to support others, to do marvelous things. And you have the power to do a lot of things. You don't have to be given the power. This is something you have within you, and you can make a huge impact. For example, I was involved in women ERGs throughout my career, and I really supported women that both reported to me and those who didn't, and was striving to hire more women. This is power. Like I had power within me to do things. No one gave me that power. This is something that you have. It's a state you're at. No one has to give you power. You have the power to do a lot of things and to make a greater impact. Authority, I see that as something you have, but you don't want to use. And I'll explain. You have authority, for example, in the workplace, when you have like a position, you have authority. So people report to you and, you have authority over them. However, great leadership, the way I see it, use authority very, very minimally. You actually goes to the third word you mentioned, influence. You exercise influence instead of authority. Yes, maybe at the beginning, people will kind of, listen to you because you have the authority, but you don't want to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to tell people, do that because I told you so, because I'm your manager. But you want to influence them to understand why you're asking something. Why is that important to get them behind? Hopefully that made sense.
It does. It does, actually. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you believe that power is sourced from within. It is an innate thing that we have. And then authority is something that we're given by either role, position, whatever. Like it's an external expression, if you will, that we should use cautiously. And then influence is really, it leverages both power and authority, but then influence is the way that we get people to come on board without having to be authoritative or without having to exercise our authority over them.
You explained it far better than I did.
No, I just took your words. Okay, so I love that breakdown and especially with regards to the authority piece. And so if as I've been having these conversations and really trying to formulate I have my answers in terms of my definitions, but in terms of formulating the connection between the three, it's really power is what we are exercising, but authority and influence are the forms in which we exercise or which we demonstrate it. And your statement around authority being something that we limit. I'm curious, is that thought coming from we as women should be limiting our exercise or use of authority, or people in general should be limiting their exercise or their use of authority?
I said that in general, not specifically for women, especially in the tech industry. I don't know how it is in other industries, but in tech and even more so in engineering, the world I come from, it doesn't work. Authority doesn't work for the long run. Sometimes people will do what you ask them because they kind of have to, they report to you, but it will not last for long. And if you exercise authority instead of influence, so basically you're taking the easier path, right? You're not trying to make an effort to build a trust, the rapport, to influence, and you take authority instead, people will not stick around. People will not give their best self to the workplace. That's why I believe every leader, not just women, every leader should limit. I'm not saying that authority is a bad thing. Sometimes you have to use it because sometimes you have to tell people to do things they don't want. And there is a business justification and there is no other way, but you don't want to use it extensively.
Yeah. So it almost sounds, and a couple of the other guests have shared similar thoughts. So it almost sounds that the meaning or the emotion that is tied to authority more so than influence is fear. And because like the underlying attachment of that emotion of fear, authority seems to be the thing that like most people they don't care for, right? We don't care for being in situations where we feel fearful or maybe oppressed in any capacity. Whereas influence is almost like it's an invitation, really, versus being told what to do. So it creates a little bit more opportunity for people to get curious, to get passionate. And when we think about as you know, as a coach, right, it's not the thing that happens, but it's the meaning behind the thing that happened that we give to it. And it's also the emotion that we attach to the thing. It almost sounds like, based on our conversation here, that the overall consensus, and not just you, but just multiple people that I've spoken to now, overall consensus: authority is usually attached to fear, it's attached to dominance, it's attached to oppression in some capacity, whereas influence is a little bit more fluid. It's an invitation, it's open, it allows people to make a decision on whether or not they want to follow. Is that tracking with
Yeah, I
you?
can relate. I can relate to what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And when I shared the meaning of power to me, I was thinking about it as something that is good, that is allowing you to make an impact, to make
Mm-hmm.
a good impact, something that is bigger than just you.
Yeah, yeah. As I think about, especially in the work that you're doing, right? And you've been in this space for a very long time. We still, especially here in the US, we have a long way to go where there is equity in terms of, women in pay and their opportunities in terms of leadership roles and capacity. So you've been in this space for the last 20 years. So you've traversed the trials, like you've had to do a lot of the plowing, if you will, to gain the respect, to be able to open doors for other women. So as we look at where we are today, especially in engineering or in the tech space, where do you see women have the most opportunity to really step into their power and really, advance at the levels that they can and they should, if that's what they choose? And where are you seeing the spaces where unconsciously we might be holding ourselves back?
I think women has the power to push themselves forward, to lean in to their careers and push themselves forward, both to management and to executive roles. And I guess the sad part is that many women don't do that and stay stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, I mean, it's in a middle kind of management level. They stay stuck there because they don't push, they don't lean into their career, they don't take control. They expect someone else to notice what they're doing and to give them the next role. Whether I feel like it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
They have to be in charge of their career. I'm not saying obviously you cannot force anyone to promote you, but you have to take the initiative, the control, and kind of forge forward in your career and not
Yeah.
expect someone to hand it to you.
Yeah, I can't remember if you're the person I had this conversation with, but when with regards to especially women of color, women period, but definitely when you go down into like underrepresented groups, to your point, there is like this cap at that mid level, whether they're in management or individual contributors, and then it's like it stays there for at least a decade before you start to see a different level. And a lot of us, we come up with the mindset that, your work, it's about your work ethic, right? It's about your work product. It's about the results. And it becomes easy to have that mindset of, let me just put my head down. Let me do the work. Someone's going to notice me. Someone's going to tap me on the shoulder. But you said a critical thing in terms of your development before, is that you had sponsors, you sought out mentors, you recognize that your manager did not have the capacity to support you in achieving the goals that you needed to. And so you took the initiative and said, okay, well, who else can help me? And did all of that. So I'm curious, like what was it that you knew then? And I know it's a loaded question, but what was it that you knew then that said, okay, if I don't do something, then I'm gonna stay stuck here?
So I think at the first management role, I wasn't thinking about staying stuck. I was just thinking of how am I even get through
Mm-hmm.
the day, right? I mean, I was just terrified, to be honest with you, because And even after the first few months in the role, that maybe I wasn't so terrified anymore, but still there were so many things that I had to do for the first time. Like if I had underperforming employee, how do you have a conversation with them? How do you let someone go? How do you, I don't know, talk with your team? How do you talk with different team members? How do you influence people? So many things I didn't know how to do, and I needed really to. So I felt like I don't know how to. No one had handed me a guidebook. How do you manage? And I do things, but just trying things out. And I said, well, wouldn't it be just better if someone that is already experienced can help me instead of me trying to do everything by myself? I also felt very lonely because what happened was I was promoted from within. So many people that used to be my peers and my friends now became my subordinates. And I'm not saying that I kind of all of a sudden stopped treating them as friends, but it wasn't the same relationship anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt very much alone. And I needed that support. So I felt just a need about being stuck, later in my career, when I felt that I was stuck at management, senior management, and I wanted to grow into a director role, I had to be very clear about what I wanted. Again, I had a strong why. I knew what I wanted. Be very clear about what was expected of me to show that I'm capable, like I'm capable to do that role, and also ask for help. And that time around, I asked for a coach and I work with a coach. So you have to really figure out, what do you want? What are you missing? What do you need? And not be shying away from asking what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really great point. And I tend to generalize here, but just going off of statistics and whatnot, that, sometimes the thought process is around, what if I ask and there's like retaliation, or if I ask and I hear no, or if, I should just be grateful for where I am, right? Like there's all these messages that we tell ourselves, and we talk ourselves out of opportunities simply because of that fear of asking. But what I've heard you say repeatedly is that part of what has helped you push past those fears, because I'm sure you had them, was the why. You centered back to, why do I want this? And because you got so clear, because you were able to attach the outcome to something that was so much more personal, and it wasn't just about a title, it wasn't just about a pay bump, that allowed you, or that pulled you through, if you will, through those, I'm sure, like scary conversations or scary asks or scary first days. So for those of you who are listening, I hope you're taking note of this. And this is true whether you are in traditional organization or whether or not you are in your own business, right? Our why has to be what drives us. And part of our natural tendency, as I mentioned before, and our gift as women, is that we're able to influence. And so we can leverage our why in whatever the endeavor is to influence others, to come alongside us, to support us, to help us, to open doors for us. So with that, for those of us who get to the place where we're like, okay, I am a powerful person, right? Just being myself, that I have the ability to influence, and that, when needed, I can exercise authority. We know that there's so much that happens that is outside of our control, that is external. And so there's a requirement, if you will, for us to intentionally be tuned into our own power, to be tuned into our own abilities. So I'm curious, what do you do as part of your practices or your routine to help you maintain that knowledge or access to your source of power?
So there are multiple things. First of all, for me, giving back is really impactful. I started mentoring in 2017 engineering managers, kind of what led me to what I'm doing today. And I started doing that completely for free. And I still volunteer. to this date at different organizations for causes that I believe, right? For women, for supporting women. And giving back is a wonderful tool because you feel so powerful when you give back, when you're able to impact someone. And this is powerful. The second source is well-being, my well-being, doing things that are good for me.
Mm.
So I exercise regularly and I take care of my body. And that helps me feel like, okay, I'm the greatest assets of myself. And I have to take care of myself. And that's helped me a lot. And also community. Community is big. Being part of different communities. And for me, it's different communities of women that you feel like you're part of something bigger than just yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. The practices, the community for sure. That has been a repeated theme here on the show for in terms of how women almost give themselves what they need in order so that they can share that and they can express that. And I love the fact that part of you fueling is you giving. That's awesome. So also as we think about, moving forward, next generation, right? You have done some plowing. The women that you're working with, they're doing some plowing. How can we support younger women, whether they are early in their career, they're still in high school, to help them start to think through these types of conversations so that they can build the confidence at the younger stages of their life and of their career, so that as they move through corporate or they move through life, that they're doing so understanding how to leverage power, authority, and influence, how to stand in their confidence, how to own their own voice.
I think that allowing them to realize they have so much possibilities, more than they can probably think. I think one of the problems that I had, when I was younger, when I was like in school age, I saw the world in a very, very limited lens. I thought there was only maybe one or two options for me. So I was happened to be good at math and physics. So I felt, okay, I can go to computer science. Not that it was a bad thing, but my view of the world was very, very limited. I saw very, very few possibilities for me. And I think if someone opened my eyes and said, well, actually, you can do whatever you want and explore, it would have given me at least, maybe I would do the same thing, but at least the feeling that actually I'm capable of way more than I think.
Mm.
And that's what I try to distill in my kids. Like my daughter, my oldest, she studied art. And she asked me, but this is what she loved doing and she's very good at it. And she asked me, hey, mom, but what am I going to do with it? This is actually the opposite, right? Usually the parents are the one that are saying, oh, go to study something that will be, practical. And I said, you know what? I can think about at least 10 things you can do. And I started listing different things. You can be a curator, you can be an artist, you can be a lecturer, you can write books, you can whatever. I mean, I just started listing different things. She was like, I haven't thought about it. And I said, those are just things that come up to me right now. Probably there are way more, and you can do probably multiple at the same time.
Yeah.
So just having those conversations, those open conversations with those girls, so they understand that everything is possible, that they can do so much, instead of because I think that the mindset is the most important thing that we have to constantly work on, right? I do that as well. Constantly work on our mindset. We can actually do way more than we think. And probably, even for myself today, I can do more things. I just need to allow first my mind to think that those things are possible for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And the piece that you shared with regards to you had a very limited view of the world. Was that because you didn't see there weren't a lot of women in your circle, like growing up, that were doing things that were like that you were exposed to? Or was that just more so like your parents were directing you towards a certain path?
I think it was a combination. I mean, first of all, back then there wasn't the internet and we didn't have knowledge like we have today. We didn't have access to so much knowledge. And I grew up in a standard middle class family. My parents worked for the same employer their whole career. And that's what they knew. And kind of I was growing up believing that, well, that's how life goes. You just get a profession and you just work there for the rest of your life. And I didn't really know what to do, but my parents kind of didn't tell me what to do, but they directed me to go and pursue something, a profession that I can make a living of. And that's why I felt like computer science will be actually a good thing to. So I think that was the mentality. And around me, I didn't see anything extraordinary. I mean, I didn't have any entrepreneurs around me or anything, you know, just standard people, regular people. And I guess I didn't think that there was something else for me even possible back then.
Yeah. And I think that's why the mentorship is so important because to your point, we don't know what people's conversations or their lived experiences are when they're younger. And so when we who have like experienced multiple things can go back and say to someone like, "Oh no, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this." I was literally just watching a show where the little kid like he was playing like a superhero, right? And his dad was a cop, and his dad was just like, "You want to know who the real heroes are? The real heroes are the cops who put on their uniform and they risk their lives every day. Like, if you really want to be a hero, go be a cop." And, I can watch that now. And in my adult state, I understand that this is a man who is giving his kid advice from his particular lived experience. But also, I can see just based on my own development, I can see how in that same conversation, while he meant well, he was squashing this little boy's dream, his curiosity, his imagination. And, I think about all of us, who are a little bit more seasoned from parents who were in the previous generations, they just gave us what they knew.
We have responsibility as parents. I mean, I see my responsibility as a parent to be there for my kids. And sometimes, yes, sometimes they do need guidance, but I'm not there to tell them how to live their lives, to tell them what is right for them, what is the right path. Only they know that. And they should find out themselves. I'm there to guide them, to help them if they need my help.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're gonna move into our blitz session here. So I have three questions for you. Knowing what you know now, given everything that you've experienced personally, professionally, all of your transitions, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a key piece of advice, what might that be?
I think it's very much related to what I just shared with you earlier. I would give a younger self an advice that, Limor, you can do everything you want. Go there and explore. You can do pretty much everything. Be curious, be open for opportunities, explore what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm giving my adult self that advice every now and then.
Yeah.
And so let's look ahead, 50, 60, 70 years from now, when you are looking back at your life, you're looking back at the work that you've done, the people that you've helped. What do you want the narrative to be?
I'm doing what I'm doing because I want people to remember me as someone who helped more women get to executive roles in tech. I want people to remember Limor. Limor was the one, not the only one, but was someone who helped women break their own barriers and achieve great success in their careers and get to executive roles.
I love that. And then last and final question, well, as it relates to the Blitz session, have there been any books or is there a book that has been pivotal for you in your growth and your development?
Yeah, there's so many books. I think one book that really opened my mind was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The reason it was so impactful, because I read it many years ago. It was like, oh my God, like what he is talking about? Like you have to go to school, you have to get good grades. This is exactly the mentality I was brought on, and it's actually completely not true. So that was just a great mind shift for me.
Mhm.
And I highly recommend everyone to read it. But there's so many books.
Yeah, that's a good one. And yeah, you're to your point, like for him to experience those two parallel universes at, while he was developing, I think that is amazing. So we will include that in the show notes. And for those who are listening, who want to connect with you, who want to learn more about the work that you do, what do you have going on? Where can people find you, hang out, learn more?
Yeah, so I would say go to LinkedIn, find me Limor Bergman on LinkedIn. That's the place where you can get to know me. You can see what I'm doing. I'm sharing a lot of content, and I'm usually trying to put on the featured section on my LinkedIn profile the latest things that are going on. You can also go to my website. To be honest, it's less updated than it should probably be. I'm just, I believe nowadays social media is the place to really be seen and let people really get to know you
Mm.
as much as they can. I want people to work with me because they already seen me, they already consumed my content, and they feel like they have a connection with me even before they met me.
Yeah.
That, wow, Limor is someone that I can relate, and I want her to help me. And I had multiple clients who told me, we feel like we already know you.
Thank you for sharing that. And I will absolutely be sure to include your links to your website as well as LinkedIn in the show notes. Limor, thank you so much for coming on, having this conversation, sharing your experience and your expertise. We will be back next week with another female powerhouse. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you found today's conversation helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your life, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon and send me a message, or feel free to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network, another powerhouse possibly, who you think might benefit from today's conversation. Lastly, as always, any links, any resources, or any upcoming training is included in the show notes, so be sure to check that before you leave today. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.